Hey everyone, welcome back. I hope you're having a great long weekend and you're enjoying your President's Day off. If you don't have it off, I'm really sorry you had to work today. I just got back from watching The Great Wall with Matt Damon. It was interesting to say the least. I think I spent the entire movie wondering why he had that really weird ass accent. It visually stunning, I guess, but don't spend any money on it. But this is not the place to discuss bad movies because we discuss bad books. And we've got a couple of chapters to get through. We're going to do a quick summary of chapter 10 and then we're going to dive into chapter 11 because I've kind of figured out her platform here. So, without further ado, Smoldering Hunger, chapters 10 and 11. In chapter 10, Darius is out hunting dark fae that have mysteriously disappeared. I'm just assuming that he just killed them all. Like, maybe it's not viable to be around in a city where people keep killing you, but that's just my opinion. And Khan, the king of kings, the guy that he's supposed to report to, shows up in the city right behind him. And Khan gets super upset that he's fucking Dr. Sophie Martin because he finds out that Ulrich is interested in Dr. Sophie Martin and he couldn't understand why Darius didn't contact him. And Darius kept getting upset that he said that he was fucking her. Not joking. Even though he himself kept saying that it was just sex, he was satiating his body, which kind of made me feel dirty. Anyway, the chapter ends with Khan telling Darius to go get Dr. Sophie Martin so they can have a chat. Alright, so let's dive into chapter 11. Let me just find it. Actually, I skipped it. Whoa. Here we go. Sophie was still thinking about her peculiar visit with Ulrich as she pulled the takeout carton from the bag. She used to eat right out of the container until she realized she'd gone 2 months without washing a single dish. That's a plus in my books. From then on, she always put her takeout on a plate. It was a nice pretend game she played, allowing herself to believe she actually cooked the meal. I don't cook meals. I'm totally cool with takeout and not washing any dishes, you guys. In reality, cooking for one was nearly impossible unless she wanted to eat the same thing for 3 or 4 meals, and she couldn't handle that. Besides, she never liked cooking. I agree with her on this. I hate cooking for myself because then you have leftovers and you're stuck eating the same food. Eating, however, was an entirely different story. She loved food. She enjoyed visiting all sorts of restaurants and sampling what a chef could create. It had been months since she had been to a restaurant. Work had been busy with her picking up all the extra shifts from the doctors who went out of Edinburgh until all the deaths stopped. Really? Shouldn't doctors stay in Edinburgh because there were so many deaths? Even sleep had been a luxury she could ill afford. She caught naps at the hospital when she was able. Sometimes it was even easier to stay there instead of returning to her flat. Why not just show us in the previous chapters that she slept at the hospital? Make it simpler. Maybe it was time to take a night and go have a nice dinner. It wasn't like she enjoyed eating by herself, but she'd learned to do it years ago. The trick was not looking as if you were about to break into a million pieces because you were lonely. I eat at restaurants by myself. It's kind of fun because you get to listen to everybody's conversations around you and watch people interact. Maybe I'm just weird. Sophie didn't mind eating alone. She didn't have to worry about keeping a conversation going, or worse, pretending to find a guy interesting. She put the sushi on her plate and filled a glass of white wine. After she sat at the table, she pulled out her mobile phone and checked the calendar. She had the next 2 days off. It wasn't by her choice. The hospital administrator had insisted. Apparently, she'd worked for 3 weeks without a day off. Someone had to do it. Why not her? She had no family or anyone waiting at home, not even a cat. She was the most likely candidate to cover those shifts to allow the others with spouses and children to get home to them. I can sleep in, she said aloud, and took her first bite of the roll. Sleeping in. What was that exactly? Her inner clock would have her awake at 5, with or without a day off. She was banned from even going to the hospital for the next 2 days. What was she going to do? I don't know, do some shopping. What did people do on their days off? Go to the movies? There were a few patients she could check on that she saw outside the hospital, but that would only take a few hours. What in the world was she going to do with the rest? What in the world, indeed? Sophie glanced at the telly. She couldn't remember the last time she turned it on. There were movies. She could go see a movie. That would eat up a couple of hours. And then what? She ate the rest of her sushi roll and was sipping on the wine when she rolled her shoulders. A nice soak in the tub would help work out the kinks. As soon as she walked into the bathroom and saw the tub, images from the night before filled her mind. Darius, the man, set her aflame with a single look. It wasn't fair that he had that kind of control over her. It's 'cause he's a dragon. It's not control, she told herself. I've just not relieved my body in a while. That's all it is. Do people really talk like that? Do they really say, oh, I've had sex, my body is in relief now? Horseshit. It was complete horseshit. Darius did it for her in so many ways she couldn't begin to count. His hair, his eyes, that amazing jaw and cheeks, that mouth, and hands. She sighed just thinking about his large hands skimming over her flesh. No, she said, and firmly put him out of her mind. Darius was gone from her life. He'd appeared as suddenly as he vanished. If she hadn't touched him herself, she would almost think him a ghost. Sophie lit the candles around the tub and turned on the water. She sat on the edge of the tub until she got the water just right, then put in the bubble bath and clicked the remote that turned on some classical music. Wouldn't it be easier to just say that she drew up a bath? We all know how to draw up a bath, you know. I hope. Where was I? The hauntingly beautiful strings began to play. Sophie danced around the bathroom as she undressed. She couldn't help but smile as she realized for a brief moment in time she had her own Highlander. Now she knew that men like that really did exist. They were rare and usually already claimed by someone, but they were out there. If she actually thought she could be in a relationship again, she would begin searching for a Highlander, a man who prided himself on loyalty, honor, and love. Not true. She'd search for Darius. She might actually view men a little differently if she'd met Darius years earlier. Then again, Sophie knew she wouldn't have. A year after she came to Edinburgh, she was still too bitter. Hell, 7 years later, and the bitterness had faded. Some. Sophie stepped into the water and sank back against the tub. She closed her eyes, listening to the music. Halfway through the soundtrack, she opened her eyes, thinking Darius might be there, but he wasn't. She finished her wine and remained in the water until the bubbles began to fade and the water turned tepid. Sophie tiled off and wrapped her robe around her, clicking off the music as she walked out of the bathroom. After sorting through some mail for the past week and tossing out junk, she took the magazines onto the couch with her and looked through them. That wasted another 30 minutes. This lady is really boring. Finally, Sophie gave up and untied her robe as she walked to the bedroom. Why do we need to know all these details? She tossed the robe onto a chair and slid between the sheets. For a long time she stared at the ceiling, thinking of Darius, of his hands on her body, his mouth, and how wonderfully he kissed her. She finally closed her eyes and let it all replay in her head. Even as sleep claimed her, she wondered where Darius was and if he was thinking of her. It was a chill that woke her. She looked to the window to see her curtains billowing into the room from the wind, and standing at the shadows was a man. Sophie knew him instantly. Darius. Does this man not knock? Guys, this is not sexy. This is really weird. You cannot just show up at a woman's bedroom, despite what Twilight may say. She didn't know why he'd return, and she didn't care. Her body heated instantly, aching to feel him inside her. He turned to shut the window, and that's when she realized he was naked. Okay, not only does he show up at her house uninvited, well, technically he's invited, but just doesn't knock, he comes naked. That's pretty presumptuous, you guys. She shifted her knees, breathless with excitement and desire. Darius pivoted to face her and slowly walked toward the bed. She licked her lips when the mattress dipped as he placed his knee on it. The details. She stared into his dark eyes and touched his face. With a growl, he slid his hand along the back of her head and jerked her to him. He claimed her mouth with a passion and fury, driving need they could only quench with each other. She groaned in response when her nipples scraped against his chest. Before he could touch her, Sophie pushed him back onto the bed and kneeled beside him. He looked up at her, a slight smile of anticipation lifting his lips. Wouldn't it be easier to just say he looked up at her with a smile of anticipation? He was a man who always was in control, a man who liked to please his bed partner, but this time she was going to be the one in control. This time she was the one who was going to be in charge. You go, girl! She leaned forward and ran her hands from his chiseled jaw down to his thick chest, to his impeccable abs. Sophie glanced at his arousal and grinned. He had driven her insane last night with his mouth, hands, and body. It was only fair she do the same to him. And oh, the things she wanted to do to him. Sophie trailed her fingers past his navel to his rod. Just totally kills her right there. She wrapped her fingers around him and felt his cock jump in her palm. That wicked grin was gone, replaced with a hunger that made her stomach catch. Her breath catch? How does your stomach catch? No. She pumped her hand up and down his length a few times while she leaned forward to lick and kiss his chest. His hands came up, not to stop her, but to take the pins out of her hair, so that the length fell around her shoulders and draped on either side of her face. Damn, he whispered. Sophie looked up at him. The way he whispered that word, as if he were enthralled with her, made her want to cry. If he didn't stop things like that, she was going to be in real trouble where he was concerned. To shift the focus, Sophie moved and brought her mouth to his arousal. He ground out her name and his hands clutching at the comforter. Sophie took him deep in her mouth. His fingers delved into her hair, almost as if he were afraid she might stop. She had no intention of stopping anytime soon. His breathing was hoarse in the silence. She could feel his gaze on her, and it made her want to pleasure him even more. She sucked in a surprised breath when his hands grabbed her and turned her so she lay on his chest with her legs on the other side of his face. So he's on his back. Did he do it while he was still in her mouth? Does that work? Sophie let out a sigh when his tongue found her clit and began to tease it. She had never done 69 before, and she wondered, why not? To give pleasure the same time as receiving it, it was perfect. I hate 69. I hate it. Absolutely hate it. You can't concentrate. What's the point? But the pleasure he brought her, the harder it was. But the more pleasure he brought her, the harder it was to concentrate on her task. To get back at him, she sucked him hard, squeezing his ballsack gently. When she tasted the pre-cum, Sophie smiled. He was almost there. She didn't plan on stopping until he came in her mouth. There was one thing she forgot while making such arrangements. Darius made his own rules. One moment he was beneath her, and the next she was on her hands and knees, and he was feeling her from behind. What's up with these quick-ass movements? Like, he would have to throw her off of him, move her off of him. Why am I analyzing this? He held her hips and began to move. He could feel his balls slapping against the back of her thighs as he increased his tempo. With his teasing of her clit, she was so close to climaxing. Then he leaned over and cupped her breast, tweaking her nipples as he did. She rocked back against him. His cheek rubbed against hers, his whiskers scraping her face. She closed her eyes. There was no use fighting against a force like Darius. He knew just where to touch her to give her the most bliss. But he barely knows you. Like, I don't understand. You gotta spend a lot of time together to kind of get to know somebody's body like that. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. Her chest heaved and her breast swelled at his touch. She couldn't think the passion could get any better until his hand lowered to her sex and found her clit. What? I thought he was already teasing her clit, and then went to her breast. I'm so confused. Did I read something incorrectly? He followed the swollen bud until she was crying out from the intense pleasure. She could hear him telling her to give him more, to give him everything. Sophie could feel his thick arousal drive into her time and time again, touching her. Hold on. We're going to check something here. Okay. I'm going to read the line in its entirety, and then we're going to discuss this. Sophie could feel his thick arousal driving into her time and time again. Touching her womb, he was going so deep. So, I don't know if she was meaning to be metaphorical here, but I can assure you that you cannot touch a woman's womb with your penis, because that is the uterus. I had to ask Google a question that I never thought I would have to ask Google. Okay, I had to ask Google if a man can pierce a woman's cervix, because I don't think you can, and Google agreed with me. You can't. What? Guys, what? At least be like, he was going so hard, she felt him deep inside her. Like, I swear to God, if you hit a woman's cervix, that shit hurts. You can't touch a womb. I can't even have the proper outrage for this right now because this is so insanely ridiculous. What? I'm never gonna have sex again because I'm gonna think of shit like this and start giggling uncontrollably, and my partner's gonna think I'm completely insane and never come back. I'm gonna be cursed by these Vicks. I'm telling you. The more he filled her while teasing her clit, the higher she went, until the orgasm swarmed her. It ripped through her like a force of a tsunami. She screamed, even as the pleasure consumed her, and while he pounded into her, still circling that tiny bud. And just as the first orgasm began to subside, another arose, this one even more intense than the first. All Sophie could do was lock her arms and give herself over to the ecstasy. Her head hung between her arms when the last vestiges of the orgasms began to fade. Darius's grip was tight on her hips as he pounded her. His breathing hitched right before she felt his warm seed shoot through her. Sophie couldn't believe she hadn't thought about a pregnancy or using protection any of the time she was with him. What did I tell you? What did I tell you? Conversations need to be had, you guys. There is no excuse for the situation to arise. None. Was Darius able to make her forget everything but him so easily? She was a doctor. She knew better than most what could happen with unprotected sex. I think the majority of us know what happens with unprotected sex. I'm sorry, I've never been with a man that made me forget the fundamentals like that. He pulled out of her and held her against him as he rolled to his side. Sophie opened her mouth to speak when his hands caressed down her hair to her back over and over again. She let herself relax once more. Darius had that effect on her. She really should be worried because she was beginning to want Darius around. Never again. But maybe with Darius. And to chapter 11. I think that was a short one. No, it wasn't. Alright. So we will be getting back into this soon. I'm actually really disturbed by this chapter. I don't have any words on this. Please don't try to touch a woman's womb if you're a man watching this. Just don't do it. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your evening, day, whatever the case it may be, and I will see you soon. Bye.